I don't want to skew the patch. So please do join me on stage. How do we make well-being a strategic imperative? I'd like to start, please, if I may. I'd like you to imagine I was 6 years old. They don't know this is coming, actually, by the way. Look at the horror on their faces. This is brilliant. This wasn't in the rehearsal, by the way. We had a really good call, talked about what we're going to talk about. I've just thrown this in, actually, so they've no idea about this. But imagine I'm 6 years old and I come to you and say, Mummy, Daddy, I've just read this term well-being, right? Could you explain it to me, please? Now, it's very important you explain it to me as if I'm 6. Okay, and the reason I want to just start there is because I want to get real about how we talk about well-being in organisations to the people that work with us, and how we explain well-being in a way that's real, every day, and that everybody could understand. So I've given you a little bit of time to think about that as I'm filling in. But David, I'm going to start with you, if I may.
Gary,
Yeah.
I want you in life, as you go on from 6 years old, to be really happy, really happy. I want you to be really looking forward to the rest of your life, and I want you to be really energized. You'll find when you grow up, Gary, we get hung up on certain words like mental health and well-being, but ask yourself, how happy are you really? How much do you want to, look forward to the rest of your life? To me, that's what well-being's all about. How energized you feel today. I think we overthink it. I think we complicate it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So being happy.
Happy's a lovely word.
Okay. Yeah. Jane, I'm 6.
David always chooses my lines, doesn't he? Every time. So I would say that well-being is how you feel in your tummy, how you feel in your heart. Are you somewhere and with people that make you smile, that really, really make you smile, so that when you wake up in the morning, you just think, this is great. That could be that you have enough pocket money, or maybe you have a little bit extra pocket money. That would be really, really good. You feel okay. You feel well enough. You're not sad. You're not feeling poorly. But most of all, when you turn around, the people, the friends that are next to you, they make your heart happy. And that's well-being.
Very good. Okay, so it's a feeling in my tummy. It's making me feel happy. Katrina.
Gosh, for that, I think all of that, and I think for me there's a bit of enthusiasm and wanting to do the thing you're going to do. I think there's the being happy with great people and just doing stuff that's fun and exciting and how you want to spend your day.
Okay, brilliant.
Which does mean going to school.
Yeah, which is mainly not going to school, eating ice cream and playing my video games, probably. So, Pa.
It's interesting how well-being, which is... It's funny, we've all gone to... There's a negative well-being as well, but you've all gone to the positive, the good version of well-being, because well-being can be about a lack of well-being. Or, so that's an interesting observation there. I loved how you said it. It's really how you feel and how the people around you make you feel. And if they're nice to you and kind to you, you feel positive, you feel good. If they're not, you feel bad. But it's also what's going on in your own head, how you feel about yourself. Are you harsh on yourself? Are you compassionate to yourself? Are you patient with yourself? Are you nice to mommy? Or are you mean to mommy or daddy? All of that contributes to your well-being.
Okay, that's great. And apologies for the rather playful beginning.
You did not help our well-being.
I didn't. I didn't. And I'm sorry to put you on the spot. But I suppose there was a serious point to the exercise, which is really to David's point, okay, which I think it's very easy to make this subject too complicated. It's very easy to make it too theoretical. It's very easy to make it too driven by the science, of which there is masses, and we all know what the science is. And we've touched on it today. But I think at its heart, some of those words are really important to hang on to, aren't they? Okay. That's good. I just want to move on now because I want to get really practical. There are a vast number of people in this room, and we talked earlier about lighting a candle. Richie, in a way, if you were here for the earlier part of the day, this notion that all of our responsibility coming out of today is to light a candle, light another candle, pass a light on. If we were to do one thing tomorrow, right, which is what candle are we going to light tomorrow for somebody, for an organisation, for one of your friends, anything. In this well-being space, as you leave this room today, what's the one candle, in a way, that you would say to everybody in this room, go out tomorrow and light this candle when it comes to well-being, right? Go out tomorrow and do this thing to help others, help your friends, help your organisations and help your teams. Pa, I'm going to start with you, if I may.
I feel tempted to start with yourself. I think it's human nature. We're inherently negative. We have that negativity bias, not just in how we interact with others, but more so how we interact with ourselves. We all, I'm sure, are familiar with our self-talk and how incompassionate and harsh we can be to ourselves, how unforgiving we can be with ourselves. So if there's one candle to light, I'd say, focus on yourself and your needs. Be egoistic for a change. Well, we're all egoistic oftentimes, but let's be confidently and proudly egoistic in terms of what we need to feel well.
Okay. Katrina.
I think, listen, actually, take time to listen. I think we all have busy lives and busy jobs. It's very easy to go from meeting to meeting. Just stop and ask a few questions. Hear what's being said and do something with what you've heard. I think if we just find time for each other and other people, we're on a really strong start of the journey.
Right, very good. David?
My candle is the power of how are you. Insight I'm allowed to share comes from HSBC. They're considered one of the best employers in the world globally when it comes to well-being. But they got a big shock a few years ago. They did a survey of 76,000 staff. And they asked them lots of questions around well-being. But one of the questions was very black and white. And it simply said, do we care about you, yes or no? And so there's 76,000 people in this survey. 38,000 staff said no. 50% of their workforce said, upon reflection, you don't care about me. Fortunately, they're brilliant with their data analytics. And they drilled into the data. And they went looking for a common denominator. And it won't surprise you, the common denominator was your boss, was your line manager. They then drilled further into the data to see what does a manager do or not do to make you think we don't care about you. And number one was in your interactions, whether on a one-to-one basis or a team meeting, those managers went straight in to talk about customers and sales and KPIs, as opposed to saying, how are you? How are you doing? And it's got to come from here, and you've got to be prepared to listen. So my candle would be to start as many work interactions as you can by saying, look, I know we're busy, but how are you? But you've got to ask it from here, and you've got to be prepared to listen.
Thank you very much. Jane?
I'm the naughty one on the panel, so I can't have just one candle. I've got to have a couple. I would say, for this audience, use the passion you have and make something happen. So I've had all my career has been large corporates, and now I've had the experience of a startup, and we had no budget. We had about £1,000 to do a huge amount with in the HR function. But I was absolutely passionate that this was going to become an organisation that cared about people, that people just loved working in. Not every single person, and I think taking something you or Patrick said, where there's been managers that haven't been like that to their people, we have gone through a route and addressed that, and they've either turned around or they've left the organisation because that can't happen. But you don't need big money to make an organisation right. Honestly, go out there and ask questions about what you've got in place. We couldn't afford an occupational health service, and at the beginning I thought, well, how on earth would I deliver what I had in my head without that? We've still not got one. But what we've got is better than anything I've experienced in any large organisation. So I'd say use your passion, ask questions, don't accept what every large corporate tells you is the right way to do it, and know your people. You know, I would hope that every manager knows that, you know, their husbands, wives, partners, dogs, children's names, because if they don't, they won't spot something going wrong. They won't be able to come up with ways of signposting or ways of helping. So know your people as well. 3 candles.
Yeah, 3 candles. Wow. 4 candles would have been great.
Nearly.
By the way.
I daren't go there.
I had to say that,
I
didn't
nearly
I?
did it.
Yeah, 4 candles. Give me, just keep an eye on time. I don't want to, give me a 10-minute card or something. I mean, 2 observations. One of which Pa made, which is this notion of us. And somebody way cleverer than me recently in my company said that the human brain is like Teflon for what's good, and it's like Velcro for what's bad, right? And I think that's a really powerful kind of thing to think about. That's just physiologically the way things are. You know, the stuff that's not great sticks, and the stuff that's great simply slips away very quickly. And so I think, you know, because of that, it's even more important of, you know, and of course in a part of David's book, David talks about Sally's dog, and Sally's dog was really a kind of an event where, you know, David's boss at the time, you know, do you know Sally's dog's name? Do you know that Sally's got a dog? Do you know Sally's dog's name? The answer was no and no. Well, the reality is you can't hope to understand or get a handle on or be even remotely able to build a relationship with Sally, because her dog is her entire life. And unless you know that, it's impossible to build a relationship with her. So I think the Sally's dog story sits at the heart of this. Just the next question. I've suddenly experienced a 17-year growth spurt, and I'm now 22 or 23. And I've walked into your organisation, and I've been there about 3, 4, 5 months. How can you spot, what are the signals and signs, and what are the markers and indicators that I, at 22, 23, am suffering? What are you doing inside your organisations to ensure that you can spot that I'm suffering, or you can find ways of making sure that you can, you know, again, I didn't necessarily touch on this in our call, so I'm kind of freestyling a bit, but I'm trying to make it very practical, because that's the big challenge, isn't it? I think for, you know, lots of people in this room, you know, the issue of well-being is about how you actually help the people in your company and how you spot where there are issues. And I just wonder, Jane, you're nodding. I just wonder whether you could maybe start us off on that one.
Yeah, I apologies here for anyone that has mental health first aid in their organisation, because it can absolutely work for people. For our organisation, it wasn't the right thing, because I have heard too many people that have then gone in and said, "Oh, you look a bit quiet today. What's wrong?" And someone was mortified, and that was a danger that was too big a risk for us to take. So we've kind of taken the opposite approach, where there's nobody with a T-shirt that says I'm mental health first aid trained or anything like that. They're not spotting changes. It's about us equipping every manager of people to know their people. I had a call on the train this morning coming down from someone who spoke to me for an hour and knew there would be no reaction to them telling me anything. So I think it's about giving people the confidence to know that they can say anything, and your face isn't going to change, your behaviour's not going to change to them, their pay's not going to change. And they told me that they had just been domestically abused. They knew there would be no reaction other than listening, support, practical help and reassurance, and that's what they got from me. And it's about making sure people can just talk about anything to anyone, because if you can create that feeling, then you don't have to sit as the HR director to spot that. You don't have to sit as the manager of one person. you can actually tell somebody else in the kitchen, you can tell your manager, but if you know there are no adverse consequences to that, then actually you can share and people will see that.
Thank you very much. Pa?
So I'd say, one, you're growing fast. You're moving really fast. It's not healthy.
In more ways than one.
Two, I would say you don't know. And I think that touches on what you just said. We're being taught to recognize signals for mental health when human beings are so diverse that the things that look like, I'll use my personal self. When I'm in a bad place, is when I'm particularly jolly. And I'm up for every party and let's go hang out, and that's how I distract myself from when I'm in a bad place. And, my brother, on the other hand, leave him alone. He doesn't want to see anybody. He goes completely dark. So, if we're teaching people, when somebody's looking for time for themselves, that's a sign, we can be totally misguided. And I think you've nailed it. Who do we want to put in a position to know those people? We could say, we need more HR people to really get to know the people. That doesn't work. Or you look to the one sort of figure for every employee that really has that very meaningful role, whether we like it or not. In the era of, in startups, people are saying, no, we don't need managers, but I'm glad you get it. We all need managers. We all want managers, and they are the best person to actually truly identify. So equipping them. So the simple answer is you don't know.
No. Okay. Katrina, you're recently appointed Chief Executive. I know how committed you are to the people and the culture and developing that in your business. As an incoming and new CEO trying to develop the business and develop culture, what are you doing to make sure that your people feel supported and that you're able to spot some of those signs potentially?
I think we're doing all the things that we've talked about, and a lot of talking and a lot of listening. I think our biggest challenge at the moment is we've got lots of new people and we don't know them. Nobody knows anybody anymore, really. Those that were around sort of pre-C, there's a bit there, but actually we've got lots of people who've joined the business. They are in the office maybe 1 or 2 times a week. We try and do, a bit of buddying and a bit of this and a bit of that, but it's not the same. So actually, we have individuals in our business who are now talking about their mental health challenges. We've never been there before. But also, you've got somebody sitting there looking, whatever emotion is on their face, who knows them well enough to say. But what worries me far more is that individual who's sat at home, who's making 17 excuses not to come into the office. Nobody knows them well enough to actually engage. And then we're actually looking at patterns, looking who isn't. It's really, really hard. Because actually, how unwilling you are, we cannot be there for everybody knowing everything about everybody at the moment. And it's, how much we want it to happen, it's tough.
And interesting. And David, you've got a good take on this, I think.
No, naturally, and so many leaders and managers have said to me in the last couple of years, but now people are working remotely. It's really difficult to keep an eye on my people because it's not the same as being in the office every day. And of course I get that 100%. Of course it's not the same. But when we work on Teams and Zoom, and we see into each other's lives on camera, it creates great opportunity for human connection. In the last 2 years, I've met more cats and dogs. I've met more children. I've met more partners in the past 40 years. And as we said earlier, that's really important. So, let's get rid of these corporate backdrops. I totally respect some people don't want people to see behind them. I get that, and we do have to respect that. But let's encourage cameras on where you can. And just one more story from last week. I was doing a webinar last week for 100 people, and it was me doing a talk for an hour. And literally was me just talking with a bit of interaction in the chat function. And it was a very standard webinar where about 15 people had their cameras on, and the rest of them didn't. And at the end of the session, the person who'd organised me to come along said to me, "Thanks, David, today seemed to go really well." I said, "Yes, it did." I said, "Just as a duty of care, by the way, here's the names of 3 people on that webinar I'm a bit concerned about." And this person looked at me and said, "Hang on, no one spoke. only 15 people had their cameras on out of 100 people. How can you possibly, as a duty of care, give me the names of 3 members of my staff that you're worried about? And I said, because during that session, I asked everyone in the chat function to give me their energy score today from 1 to 10, with 1 being low and 10 being high, and those 3 people scored 1. Now, I said there may be good reason why they scored a 1, but I'm just a bit concerned because 1 is a bloody low figure, and it may be that it's their cry for help, that something's going on. So I think we have to learn to work in different ways, to check in with our people. And use of language is really important, by the way. I spend my life these days saying we've got to get better at talking about mental health at work. The worst thing you can say to anyone is, I'm worried about your mental health. It's too invasive. It's the best way to close somebody down. When we use things like energy, when you say to someone, what's your energy level on a scale of 1 to 10, they're more likely to open up and be honest with you. So it is really difficult to get to know people. Many people have started jobs in the last 2 years. They haven't really met anybody.
No.
And it isn't as easy as it used to be. But I guess we just have to work harder at using different techniques.
Yeah, okay. Just before I've got, I want to cover one last question. But just before I do, I just wonder whether there's anybody wants to throw anything to the group in eggs. General around the topic of, eggs or anything you like, really. Anything that you pressing that's on your mind that you want to talk about, well-being, organisations, people. Nobody has to. I've got a supplementary and final important question, but anybody? Yeah, sorry. I should have done that for you. I'm so sorry. Very lazy of me.
Thank you. Really interesting chat. Thanks very much. Just got a question. On Instagram, there's a thing around almost aggressive positivity, and it's much more on social media and on Instagram, and it kind of infiltrates organisations. You see it on LinkedIn about you can be the person you want to be. And there is almost this kind of aggressive positivity about what you can achieve. And almost it's undermining well-being. And I just wondered what your thoughts are on that.
Paul, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, it's fake, so obviously it doesn't, it has a detrimental effect. But I will say, I mean, in defense of modern times, I don't think it's necessarily new. It's just at a larger scale. Human beings have always wanted to make themselves look better than they are. But yeah, I agree. It has a negative effect because we're creating unrealistic expectations. But I would say, we have to maybe move away from, because there's a tendency to jump to those challenges that we cannot influence and can do the most therapeutic thing about, we can complain about it. And I'm not saying that's what you're doing, but that's one of those topics where there's just nothing we can do about it, so I don't even think about it, except getting my kids off it, which I'm failing at, but that's a different topic. It's, where do these emotions happen? Where do these experiences happen? They happen in our day-to-day interactions. And, if I may sort of piggyback to something that was said earlier on, which is true that the pandemic, home office, it's made it all harder to know our people, right? That sounds obvious, but it's not necessarily true. It's made it harder to know our people for those of us who were crappy managers anyway. Because when you look at the data, the many good managers that are out there, they actually know their people better as a result of the pandemic. Yeah. When we look at our data globally, and we've been studying this, because we've started to learn to say, hey, it's a pandemic, what am I supposed to do? I can't get to know them. Well, good managers deliberately engage with their people. They don't accidentally do it, like was shared earlier on, where you bump into Timothy on the way to the toilet, you go, oh, you look a little off today, are you all right? Well, you don't have that anymore. And that was the accidental management that, that individual was experiencing. But really good managers never did this accidentally. They woke up, somebody said it, they woke up on Monday thinking, what do my people need today? And sadly, most of us are not that manager. Most of us need a lot of work to get close to that, but there are those amongst us who, that's how we are hardwired. And so it's not, I would say, let's not get stuck on the conditions, let's look at the people.
Okay. We've got a lot of nods. I've got one last question to wrap up this panel and the day, and it's a competition. All four of you are in competition with each other now, because we like some healthy competition, don't we? We might even pick a winner, to be honest with you, because...
Wait, what do you mean might? What kind of competition doesn't have a winner?
No. I mean, we might pick a winner from the audience, or I might randomly pick a winner. So we'll definitely pick a winner, right?
Wait, so
We'll
I'm
definitely
not
pick a winner.
winning?
So you've got. I told you I'd keep the energy levels up, didn't I? Hey? I told you I'd try. So you've got 60 to 90 seconds to give us an absolutely killer piece of advice. One piece of advice to everybody in this room. What do you do to make well-being? That's the one thing you do to make well-being the only strategic imperative in your business, because you've only got one. What do you do to make well-being the absolute center of the strategic DNA of your company as of Monday morning next week? And Jane, I am going to start with a small pause with you.
I think I would say ask your people how they feel about working in your organisation, because I could lay a lot of money bet that if we ask the people in my organisation, a very, very high majority would say this is well-being. Not every single one, but a very, very high majority. Ask them, and if they feel okay, you're treating them well, or they want to stay, your productivity goes up, your business gets better, your people want to stay.
Thank you. David?
The tone does have to come from the very, very top of the organisation. We still see too many clients who are ticking a box when it comes to mental health. My favourite story in the last 2 years, and I'll name him, a business called Vanarama, just been bought out by Autotrader for £200 million. Their CEO, he sent out a video to all of his staff at the start of the pandemic that went a little bit like this. He said, "Hi everybody, at the moment I don't care about sales. I honestly don't care about sales. What I care about is you and your well-being and the well-being of your families." He said, "What I'm going to be doing over the next year or so is just making sure we've still got a great business to work for, that we're all still proud to be here." And he said, "I'm going to say it again. At the moment, I don't care about sales." Well, guess what? Sales went up. They had a brilliant time during the pandemic because his people truly were inspired by the authenticity of his messaging. Of course he cares about sales. He's put his life into that business. But as a CEO, he also cares truly about his people. And by putting the well-being of his people first, he was doing the best thing to protect the business as well. So it has to come really from the top, where possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pa?
That's a tough one. I'm not going to make a lot of friends here, but you don't. Well-being is not your core strategic pillar. Well-being is an enabler of what you're trying to achieve. And your goal, whatever, depending on the business you're in, is going to be a business objective, to be fair. And I think what you do is you clearly demonstrate how well-being supports that strategic business objective, what you just said earlier on. And I will say that might have been a very effective gentleman, but you lose credibility when you say, "I don't care about it." Because there are leaders who've done it, by the way, in the pandemic, only 6 months later to fire 20% of their workforce, because you need to survive as a business. So I would say be very authentic about your business, you have business objectives, and clearly use data, use anecdotal evidence, to show how your people's well-being will drive your business forward. Make the business case is what I would say. Yeah. Don't make it a moral argument. I find moral arguments, as much as I believe in them, they somehow don't work quite as well in business. Yeah. And so I always go with the money. And I sound like a real
one of the things that you said in your presentation was about this notion of running blind, in terms of data, information, and it's true. I am going to protect my own well-being by allowing my client to go last.
Do you know what your plan's going to say, though?
Katrina.
Actually, mine sounds a bit trite, but I think it's what I try and do in our business, which is a small business, I can do this, is treat everybody like they really matter. that actually anyone I talk to, I care about them, and I care their experience and what they're going through and whatever. I care about them, and that really matters to me. And for me, all this is great. Authenticity is what it has to be about. And that's what I would say, really.
And by the way, not trite at all, but one of the things that you missed earlier in the day, we were talking about people being at the centre of all of what we're trying to achieve, and this notion that nothing about us without us, right? Which I think is a very powerful thought. I didn't say it, somebody much cleverer than me did. I've just used it today, but I think that's at the heart of what you're saying, nothing about us without us. And I think it applies across the board to well-being, to culture, to people, and in a way, this is what today was all about. Could I just say that, of course, there are no winners. They were all fantastic. I couldn't be happier. I couldn't be happier that we managed to get 4 of them on stage. Thank you very much indeed, all 4 of you, for coming down and helping. Bravo. Thank you very much. Thank you, James.